as the night. You heard it right, 2 million non-Western immigrants in one single year. The natural growth in Europe itself was negative. There were 63,000 more deaths than births. And without the high birth rate among the many Muslims residing in Europe, the gap between the two would have been even greater. The 2004 World Population Prospect of the United Nations predicts that at the current fertility rate, the European population will decline from 728 million to 606 million between 2005 and 2050. It is a decline of 17%, and this decline will be especially rapid in Eastern Europe. Bulgaria will lose 40% of its population. Romania will lose 30%, and Poland will lose 25%. The situation in Western Europe is as bad, but there the Muslims make up the balance. In the Western European countries, the declining birth rate is compensated by large-scale immigration and by high birth rates among the immigrants, but even there the population will decline. Germany will lose 13% of its population, and Spain over 1/10. In June 2005, the German Minister for Immigration presented a report which indicates that the number of people in Germany with immigrant backgrounds has risen to over 14 million. That is almost 1 in every 5 inhabitants. In some of German cities, over 30% of the young people come from immigrant families, chiefly Muslim ones. In barely a few decades, the Muslim population in Europe grew from some 100,000 to many millions. How many Muslims are there in Europe? Estimates vary from 15 million to about 50 million. The annual report of the US on religious freedom estimates that 23 million Muslims currently live in Europe today. In many European cities, non-Western immigrants currently represent 1/3 to over half of the population. In Brussels, the capital of Europe and the capital of Flanders also, 57% of the population is of foreign, chiefly non-European extraction. The name most frequently given to newborn boys in Brussels in 2005 and in the 5 preceding years is Mohammed. The same is true in nearby Amsterdam and Rotterdam, and also it lays its egg in the European nest. But once the egg is hatched, it treats its host with utter contempt. It was Mullah Krekar, who is an Islamist who lives in Norway, who told the Danish newspaper Dagbladet last year, and I quote, "Look at the development in Europe's population, where the number of Muslims is growing like mosquitoes. Each Western woman in the EU produces an average 1.4 children. Every Muslim woman in the same countries is producing 3.5 children. In 2050, 30% of the population in Europe will be Muslim," unquote. Dear friends, radical Muslims regard Europe as mission territory. Not one European country has succeeded in assimilating and integrating the Islamic minorities into its society. Muslims develop Islamic communities, societies within the society, with mosques, their own cultural centres, their own shops, their own banks, their own travel agents, their own social life. Contacts with the European population are kept to a minimum. Saudi Arabia and other strictly religious Muslim countries such as Iran invest huge sums of money to subsidize the building of big mosques in Europe. The prayers in these mosques are often led by extremist imams. Muslim youngsters are in touch with radical Muslim groups through the internet. In this manner, the radical Islamists infiltrate in Europe Muslim communities. European Muslims almost all have satellite dishes. On daily basis, they are exposed to the radical Islamic Arabic views on such issues as the Palestinian question or the situation in Kashmir. Their friends radical Islam has an increasing influence on policy making in European states, but through the use of violence and through infiltration in the established political